I think it worked.
Now it's, yeah, Heather just got back to me. I'll have to apologize to her. I don't know. I think the new laptop, it doesn't recognize me yet.
Okay.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hi, Tanya.
How are you?
Good. Anna's going to be recording tonight's meeting, so if we can give her whenever we turn on the recording function, then please give her permission to record.
¡Hey, cállate!
So who should I make the primary translator, Tanya? Hi, Tanya. Happy New Year. Haven't seen you yet. Sorry, I'm just jumping into the work right now.
No worries. Happy New Year to you too. You can leave me as the as a participant right now, so I can give instructions, and maybe you can put Diana as an interpreter, please.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you guys?
It's raining. It's pouring cats and dogs over here. in The valley.
Same here. Half inch so far, which is a lot for us. So I don't know up north that they laugh at us. Half inch, that's no big deal, but that's a lot for us.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. So it seems like we're at 13 participants, so I'm going to wait a couple more minutes for folks to log on before we start.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's meeting. We're about to get started and we see that folks are arriving. We are now streaming live on YouTube. Just going to give it 2 more minutes while people get settled in. We see folks are connecting to their audio. Thank you so much for being here. We'll get started momentarily.
Okay, it's 5 o'clock, so I'll go ahead and start the meeting now. Hi, everyone, and Happy New Year. Welcome back. I hope you are all staying safe and dry amidst the storms going on, and I hope that you all had some time to rest and recharge over the holidays, spend some quality time with your loved ones. Thank you for joining today's meeting. In order to ensure that there's accessibility to all CSC members, residents, and other members of the public, we're going to go ahead and provide some instructions on choosing the correct language channel on Zoom before we continue on. So if you can, please stay on mute unless you are speaking or planning to speak. You may use *6 if you're participating by phone. Raise your Zoom hand to ask a question during a presentation question and answer session. You may use *9 if you're participating by phone. For residents who are enrolled in the stipend program, they should stay for at least 75% of the meeting to be eligible for a stipend, and that amounts to 90 minutes of a 2-hour meeting. I will now pass the mic over to Lingüística to review these instructions in Spanish.
Buenas tardes a todos, bienvenidos. Les recordamos que tenemos interpretación disponible en español para ustedes para esta junta. Si usted se unió con una computadora, va a ver el icono de un mundo en la parte de abajo de su pantalla. Por favor, seleccione el canal de español. Si usted ingresó con un teléfono móvil o una tableta, va a tocar su pantalla, va a buscar los 3 puntitos en la parte de abajo. Seleccione donde dice interpretación de idioma. Después seleccione el canal de español y por último el botón que diga listo, finalizado o terminado para que pueda escuchar la junta en español. And this is just a reminder that we are providing simultaneous Spanish interpretation. So if you see the globe at the bottom of your screen, you can select English if you're a monolingual English speaker. If you are joining with a cell phone or a tablet, you need to tap your screen, select the 3 dots, select language interpretation, select English, and select done. Do you want me to give the instructions that you just gave in English and Spanish, or are you going to repeat them?
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay. Vamos a repetir las instrucciones para la reunión virtual que acabamos de escuchar en inglés. Permanezca en silencio a menos que esté hablando o planeando hablar. Utilice *6 si participa por teléfono. Levante la mano de Zoom para hacer una pregunta durante una presentación de preguntas y respuestas. Utilice *9 si participa por teléfono. Los residentes en el programa de estipendio deben permanecer durante al menos 75% de la reunión para ser elegibles para un estipendio, es decir, 90 minutos de una reunión que dura 2 horas.
Sorry about that. I had some technical difficulties. Give me 1 second to reorient myself. Thank you so much for that interpretation. Hi again and good evening. Welcome to our January chapter community steering committee meeting. My name is Vanessa and I will be facilitating today's meeting on behalf of the Harder Company team. I'm joined by Jessica Olson from the Air District, as well as my colleagues Jem Marasigan and Amy Ramos, who will be co-facilitating with me today and providing technical support as needed. As you know, my team members, Jem and Evie, are available to help with any technical support that you need and to keep track of the action items throughout the meeting. Please don't hesitate to reach out to our team with any questions via the chat at any time. I'm excited to share that we're also joined by our co-host, Michelle McManus, tonight, who I'd like to give special thanks to for volunteering as chapter's co-host this evening. We continue to encourage anyone who would like to volunteer as co-hosts for a CSC meeting to let us know so we can support you and make that happen. As a reminder, our co-hosts decide the level of participation and facilitation that they will have during the meeting. Harder Company and the Air District will work closely with you to ensure that the co-host feels prepared during the meeting. Michelle, if it's okay with you, I'd like to pass the mic over to you in case you'd like to share a couple words.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for making this all so easy. And Happy New Year to everybody. Welcome back. Look forward to doing a lot of great things this year. Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you, Michelle. And thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules once again to be here today. We really value your ongoing commitment and your engagement in this process. And it's really because of you that your community will be able to develop and implement new strategies to monitor air quality and help reduce impacts. And before I continue on, I'd just like to remind everyone to be on the right language channel if you are not already. So to ensure that everyone has access to make comments during this virtual meeting, we ask that you adhere to the commitments for engagement that you see on this slide. Does anyone have any questions before we move on to the next slide?
Vanessa, on my end at least, there seems to be a lag. I'm still seeing our virtual meeting slide. Maybe stop sharing and reshare.
Okay, sorry about that. Let me
I think
do
we're
that real
all
quick.
going to blame it on the rain, experiencing a little bit of technical lag.
Yes, I think that's what it is. Sorry, just give me 1 second.
In the meantime, I don't mind kind of saying a couple of things while you work on your technical things. I just want to welcome everyone and wish them a happy new year as well. This is Jessica Olson. I'm the Director of Community Strategies and Resources with the district. And I'm just really briefly going to let you all know I'm joined by a lot of district colleagues today because we have a variety of different topics. We have Zong and Eric, who are kind of a part of my team and the outreach team. If you guys want to wave, they're your community liaisons and they assist in communicating with you all about all the different things going on with meetings. We're also joined today by Mia Vu, who is a supervisor in our incentives team. We're going to talk a little bit about incentives later, and she's definitely someone who can help answer questions. And then we're also joined by a couple folks from our compliance team, Elizabeth or Ellie Rodriguez and John Stagnero. They are both with our compliance team and going to be presenting to you later today. And then we also have Anna Stone, who helps out with the Spanish language recording, and Jamie Holt, who has a great announcement for us pretty shortly here. So thank you for allowing all of us to be here since it's such a diverse meeting. And I just want to thank Michelle once again for being such a great co-host and helping us prep for today.
Thank you, Jessica. So I think I skipped over one of the slides, so I will go ahead and read that out at this time before we go on to the agenda items. So before we get started, we ask that you please mute yourself and make sure your full name and organization are showing as your screen name. In order to change your screen name, please click on the top right side of your picture or your video. CS members are going to use the naming convention CSC-first, last name. And one example is CSC-Jane Doe. And if you're a resident, you're going to use the naming convention capital R first name, last name. And for all other participants, you're going to use the naming convention first name, last name, your affiliation. So for example, Jake Smith AD. For the Air District or CARB, you're going to use AD or CARB. For the general public, you will use P as your affiliation. And for all other organizations, you're going to write out your organization name as your affiliation. And we'd like you to please note that meeting hosts may update your screen name during the meeting at any time. So now we're going to go ahead and read out the agenda topics. As a reminder, the agenda topics for today's meeting that you see have been requested by CSC members, either during the last CSC meeting, which we had in November, or during the most recent agenda setting meeting, which also took place at the end of November. First, we have our welcome and introductions to take place at 5 p.m. Next, we'll be reviewing the action items tracker at 5:10 p.m. A debrief and a reflection will take place at 5:15. And at 5:35, we'll have a discussion on oil and gas SERP commitments. At 6:15, we'll have a SERP measures update. Standing updates will take place at 6:35 p.m. There will be a wrap-up, next steps, and agenda setting portion at 6:50. And last but not least, at 6:55, we'll have a general public comments discussion. And as a reminder, today's agenda topics are designed to provide updates on action items from the previous meeting, provide space to debrief and reflect on the accomplishments of the previous year, as well as talk about goals for this year, review and discuss SERP measures, addressing emissions from oil and gas operations, provide an update on SERP measures, including bike lane improvements, indoor air filtration and vegetative barriers, as well as standing updates. And since we're on the topic of agenda items, I'd like to take a moment to remind you all that in addition to contributing to the monthly CSC agenda items, you're also welcome to spend more time on items or table items if you wish to at any time. This is ultimately your meeting, so we want to make sure that you know that you have a say in how each meeting progresses. And so you're welcome to provide those type of suggestions at any time. I would now like to pass it over to Jessica Olson for welcoming remarks.
I think I said most of them, so I'll just say welcome again and definitely echo Vanessa, your comments in the beginning. I hope folks are staying dry and staying safe, especially the next few days as it continues to rain. And we're thinking of all of you and just grateful that you all made time for us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Now we'll move on to the review action items tracker. Amy, please take it away.
Thank you, Vanessa, and thanks everyone for being here tonight. Really appreciate your flexibility as we navigate today's technical issues as well. So during this portion of the agenda, as you already know very well, we share action item progress. So as you know, you all get to share whatever action items you are requesting, either from yourselves as a committee, from the Air District, or from any of the agencies that are here tonight. And for every meeting that we have, we kick off the meeting by providing you with an update on how things are going. And so this is a way for us to make sure that there is some accountability and transparency in the AB617 implementation process. And so for tonight, we're going to have, I think Eric is going to walk us through the action item tracker to give you an update on how things are going. As Eric is presenting, please keep in mind that these are all of the action items that you all as CSC members requested at the last meeting. And so if at any time during our meeting, you think that there's another action item that needs to be included that we haven't added, please do reach out to any one of us from our team. Feel free to interrupt the meeting, or at the very end when we read out the action items, you can always amend them and we can always update them. So Eric, please take it away.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Can you all see the action items?
Looks good, Eric.
Alrighty. So yes, thank you for the space, and I'm going to be reading out the action items for today. As you all know, that these action items are from November, so don't be alarmed that you do not see a December date on there. I know we've had some follow-up from that in other CSCs. So our first action item is the Air District will monitor emissions from 3 market locations. The CSC did point out that there is cooking smoke during the weekends, afternoons, evenings, and on multiple occasions. And you all wanted us to gather more systematic data that is representative when emissions are being released. So the status of this action item is ongoing, and the district air monitoring team is working on the best approach for mobile monitoring at the suggested outdoor cooking locations while ensuring vehicle and staff safety. We'll have more on this of an update during our air monitoring updates later on in this meeting. So our next action item is the Air District will share more information regarding indoor air filtration project plan updates. This action item is in progress, and the district submitted the residential air filtration program plan to CARB December 22nd. To read more on this project plan, we will share the links to the English and Spanish versions in the chat. Our third action item is the Air District will work with a fireplace retailer to explore new opportunities to engage with Shafter residents. So that includes setting up a display, sharing information about the program and its requirements, and providing assistance with the application process. This action item is in progress. However, we are happy to announce that the Air District will hold a fireplace changeout show and tell at 4:30 p.m. Tuesday, January 17th at the Tin Cup Coffee. The address and more information on this will be shared with the CSC later on. And our last action item is the Air District will share information about bus battery warranty with CARB and the CSC. This action item is complete because we distributed the information to the CSC member who requested more details. And I did know that Jem had some follow-up with one of these action items. So Jem, if you wanted to take it away, I'll stop sharing my screen right now, and I'll give it to you.
I'm not sure that Jem did. I know that Jamie maybe. Eric, read that.
Jamie, I'm sorry.
So Jamie I think she's joined us, but if not, let me know. I'm having also internet connectivity issues, so I don't know if a few of us are. I'm going to stop my video. Hopefully my screen share works, and I'm just going to share with you a flyer and reiterate what Eric just shared. Are you all seeing this flyer?
Not yet, Jessica.
Yes, maybe.
Oh, now we are.
There it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. All right, maybe someone with, I don't know if there's, I'm going to try, but stop me if I get a little too choppy. Someone else from the team can explain. But essentially, in response to the request, we have, can you all hear me? No.
No, Jess, we're going to go ahead and see if someone else on your team. I see
Yeah.
Elliot here.
I think Jamie or Zong might be the best person. Zong, if you're able to.
Hi, this is Long. I'll try my best. My throat, I'm recovering from a really bad sore throat. So I'll do my best. Yes, in response to the request of a kind of an event where we could share information about our change out program, we were able to connect with some retailers, and we are going to have this event next Tuesday from 4:30 to 6 p.m. At the Tin Cup Coffee in there at Shafter. We will have the retailers there on site as well as staff on hand to answer questions. So we definitely encourage everyone to attend if you can. Bring your questions, and you can even we'll have staff on hand to even help you with applications. So if you have any questions, please give us a call. I will be dropping in the chat right now the flyer. It is bilingual, and we also sent out packets today. So in the next day or two, hopefully you will get these flyers in the mail. They were sent out to residents and some of our advocates. So anyone else, if you would like copies, just let us know, and we can also get them out to you as well. That was it. Did anyone have any questions? If not, then okay, awesome. Thank you.
I have a question. The last picture, what is the last picture on that flyer? The other one was our fireplace insert. What was the last picture on that?
As long as I can answer that. It's actually an electric heat pump. It's a mini split electric heat pump. We do offer funding through the program for electric heat pumps.
What does an electric heat pump do exactly?
Well, this one specifically, instead of using your fireplace, you can use this to actually heat up your room. This actually has an air conditioning option too. So during the summer, it kind of does both. But it's a different option for heating up a specific room. This one will just be a room. There's different types of heat pumps, other heat pumps that are ducted. And so it could be an entire system through your house. And we do have retailers that offer that specific piece of technology too that you can get through the program. So it just heats up your home. In this case, it takes the air from the outside and heats up your home from the inside.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Linda, you have your hand
Linda?
raised.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if I could be sent some flyers to hand out too. And then, did you guys send it to Shafter Press, our little newspaper?
I don't believe we sent it to Shafter Press, but all the residents in the CSC will be getting packets, and everyone should be getting about 25 flyers.
I believe
Did you-
we also have a social media post to share, and we can share that with folks if you have a local social media group it needs to go to. We got paid advertising this time.
Okay, and then is City of Shafter and Tin Cup, are they included in the social media post to share?
We can follow up on that.
Okay, if not, just let me know. So if you had that flyer even in an email, I'll be more than happy to get it out to a lot of folks. If you
Yeah,
could send it to me.
Yes, Linda, our hope is to, I'm working on the verbiage this tonight and tomorrow, and we should be able to get out an email to the whole CSC with the flyer as well as more information about it. So if you want to share that flyer and the email with anyone, that would be great.
Okay, thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Eric, was that all? Oh, I see Michelle's hand is raised as well. Is that a stale
Yeah.
hand?
No, I just wanted to say that I'm really excited about this. I tried to do this once. I went to the place and they were busy and I didn't have all my questions together, and we drove all the way to Bakersfield. So this is really exciting to have something in Shafter where you can go. And even if you went early and they say, well, we need the size of your fireplace or we need your dimensions, I could run home and get it and come back. So this is really exciting thing. So thank you for whoever got this going. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead, Eric. Anything else to add?
Nope. Those were all our action items. And yeah, please feel free to take the wheel now, Amy. Thank you.
No, thank you. And thank you, Michelle, for sharing that excitement. You know, this excitement is possible because of the work that you all are doing in collaboration with the Air District. So we are going to try a new approach, if it's okay with CSC members. What we would like to do is, as we present an agenda item, instead of waiting until the very end for public comment, I do see that there's some public folks here today. We'll stop at the agenda item and then ask for public comment. So in this case, we just finished the action item tracker review. We had a couple CSC members comment on it. Are there anybody, or is there anyone from the public that would like to add any comments or has any questions before we move on to our next agenda item? So you'll see us practice this at the end of every agenda item. Okay, I will take the silence as no comments from the public. And before we transition, just want to make space to remind you that as part of the implementation of AB617, it is really important for all CSC members to provide their feedback so that we can ensure that we're implementing the work to the best possible way that you all can contribute. And so the meeting today will provide some space, as you already know, to allow for the CSC members to share their reflections and to debrief on the process. And as I previously mentioned, if you are from the public and would like to comment, we'll take your comments after all CSC members have shared their thoughts. Vanessa, take it away.
Thanks, Amy, for closing that section out. And thank you, Eric, for reviewing those action items for us. So next, we're going to take the next 20 minutes to reflect on the achievements and the milestones from 2022. To help get us the conversation started, we have a few guiding questions that were also added to today's agenda. If you didn't get a chance to look at them, that's totally fine. Michelle will read them aloud for us, and I will also post them in the chat for you to reference shortly. So just You do that right now.
So Vanessa, do you want me to go ahead and read them?
Yes, that would be great. So sorry, Michelle, before you go ahead, I'm gonna say that we really strongly encourage you all to share your reflections and aspirations. And we would love for you to share in person, whether that's through chat or vocally. But if you have reflections that you'd rather share at a later time, that's also fine. You can contact either us or the Air District at a later time, and we'll be sharing that contact information at the end of the presentation. Michelle, please go ahead.
Okay, so what are some highlights of 2022 for you? And so I took the chance to reflect on these, and I think that our highlights that our group is coming together and focusing on our direction and with our specific goals, and we are honing in on those and making those things happen, and I think that's a great highlight. The next one is, what are you most proud of? I think I'm most proud of the reallocation of funds, moving around to help our community. We thought when we started, we wanted money to go one way, and we've changed where we were going. And that's a great thing when we can change and refocus, and anything that helps our community and moving that money around definitely does. The workshop, and then of course, I'm kind of excited about the workshop insert if you didn't get that. And then the next one is, what topics should be prioritized in this new year? Well, we've been working on these three. That's kind of what the home air filtration systems. I'm really hoping that we can get something before the allergy dusty season comes up. It's kind of hard to think about right now when everything's so wet, but I'm hoping maybe we can structure some sort of community workshop too, that maybe we can show up with our address and just pick one up instead of doing a form. So I'm not sure how that's going to work, but I'm happy to help with that. I think prioritizing those sidewalks in Mexican Colony. I know that's a huge project, but if we keep on moving forward on that, I think that's a great thing. And then of course, the sidewalks and the bike paths on Highway 43, which is another huge project. But those are all kind of, I think we've been talking about those a lot lately, and I assume that's what I'd like to prioritize those in the new year. What are there any goals the CSC would like to achieve in the new year? For me, I'd like to keep on moving forward, keeping our community involvement up, and trying to reduce where we can and celebrate our successes and keep on working together. And that was kind of it. And so thanks for letting me share my opinions, and thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you, Michelle. We really appreciate your thoughtful reflections. And before I invite everyone else to share their reflections, I want to assure you all that you will not be providing your reflections in vain. We'll be writing these down, and we're actually going to share a Jamboard where we'll be sharing all of the notes that we're taking down so that we can discuss those at a later time and brainstorm on how to implement them in the year 2023. So now I'd like to share anyone else who has any thoughts, any reflections, any comments, to do so either via the chat, or you can also raise your hand and share them verbally as well.
Vanessa, can you read out loud the questions again so that they get interpreted one more time for the folks, since it's in English on our screen?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will go ahead and read out the guiding questions one more time. So the first one says, what are some highlights of the year 2022 for you? The second one is, what are you most proud of? The third is, what topics should be prioritized in this new year? The fourth is, are there any goals that the CSC would like to achieve in the new year?
So as you all think about sharing, we'll be taking notes live on the Jamboard to keep track of what you all share. And so you can access the Jamboard by clicking on the link in the chat, or I'll continue to share my screen as we navigate the conversation. I see Linda's hand is raised.
I am really excited for a highlight for 2022 that we got rid of that match funding. That was a huge one for us, and I just can't appreciate, or I just appreciate so much everyone that went to bat for us, since we're a disadvantaged community, to not have the match funding. Let's see. Sorry, I forgot the rest of the questions, but some of the things that I would like to highlight that I'm really looking forward to are the sidewalks that are going to go in, the bike paths. I really want to work with community members. I've talked to a few on some ideas, so I'd love to see that get implemented in chapter. The vegetative barriers to help because of the dust that we have on our roadways like Lerdo and down 43 that are major traffic areas. And so if we can still get urban greening trees, that would be great. And then the air filtration, I'm glad that it looks like we got some more funding towards those, because those were a huge hit. And I hope we can get those to more folks before our dusty season, because it's really hard on folks when we've got all the dust in the air. And I know I'm prone to sinus infections, and I'm sure everyone else is around here. So we appreciate all the work that everyone's done to get those to community members. So that was it for me.
Thank you, Linda. Does anyone have any additional reflections to share?
I don't mind sharing if, while there's kind of a pause, maybe it'll kind of to piggyback a little bit off of what Linda was sharing. I think a lot of, especially the vegetative barriers and indoor air filtration and road paving work, is because of all of the commitment from the CSC to not only be involved and interested in these meetings, but also in extra meetings like subcommittee meetings and agenda setting meetings to really push forward and really provide feedback on all of those different measures. And so I just like to reflect, I'm really grateful for all that. And moving forward, I'm really looking forward to continuing, and if needed, adding or allowing for further subcommittees. I feel like we do get a lot of work done when we kind of focus on one particular measure. And I know that's been of interest to you all for some time.
Bianca, I know you all are in one space. I don't know if it's easier to unmute and have all of you share one at a time. We can go through that room. Oh, Maria, is it not working? The interpretation, Tanya? Bianca, can you hear us in Spanish? Okay, we hear that it's working. So Maria, Anabel, if you guys have anything to say, we're only getting half the information.
Yes, we are. Nomás la mitad. Can
It
somebody?
doesn't, is it not
No,
going through?
it comes in and out.
Oh, gotcha. So we're having technical difficulties on the Spanish channel.
I can hear you. It doesn't seem to be coming in and out for me. I wonder, are there other, is that the only person logged on? I know we have someone on our team in the Spanish channel. I think they were hearing mostly clearly. I wonder, maybe we'll just do a concerted effort on the English speakers part of course, to continue to speak slowly. And maybe that will help with the interpretation, maybe being a little bit, easier to listen to.
Yes, so we know that we accomplished a lot. That is, you all in Shafter in 2022 had a very busy time in collaboration with all the partners that are here tonight. And we would really like to know, what are you all most proud of? And of all the work that you all did during 2022, what are some of the things that you want to make sure that get prioritized in this new year? So this is the time for reflection so that we can continue to prioritize the things that you all want to continue to work on. Let's go ahead, Socorro.
Unmute. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
We're trying to find the Spanish version. I'm trying to help Felipe Trujillo. Can you hear me?
Can you clarify? You're trying to find the Spanish version of
what's going on right now. Yeah.
The channel. Got it. Okay. Maybe we bring up the slide one more time on how to get in the interpretation channel.
Yeah, because I can hear you in English and I'm trying to help her. I'm our IT person of the night. And I typed in the link and it brought us here, but she needs to hear it in Spanish. So I don't see anything yet. What to do.
Hi, can you see my screen?
Maybe. Yeah. Okay. What do I do?
So what you want to do to select the correct channel is there is a world-like interpretation icon at the bottom of your screen. It's titled interpretation.
Got it. Right. So now I just select Spanish.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. I have it. So now I'm good. Sí, está bien.
Should be good.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Okay. There you go.
Try.
Nabel, I see you have your hand raised.
Sí, querían dar una sugestión para este próximo año en qué podamos trabajar. Déjeme traer a ver.
Pues que le den prioridad a las vallas verdes, porque como dice, el polvo va a comenzar y parece que esto se está dejando muy retirado y cada año es una polvadera. Entonces, no hay que esperar a que pasen otros cuantos años para volver a empezar con esto. Eso sí, para mí eso sería mi prioridad.
Thank you so much, Annabelle, for that reflection. And I see we have another reflection in the chat, which I'm going to read out at this time. So Angie Nelson, she provided some highlights for the year. She said being able to see where our needs really are and moving funds to meet those needs is important. She is most proud of being able to work together as a committee and understand all sides of the issues. Prioritize projects like the urban greening, bike paths, and air filtration. Goals are to achieve, let's get more projects crossed off of our list. So I see there are a lot of folks that are elevating some highlights as well as some accomplishments, and Annabelle brought up a really good suggestion. And so I would also like to raise a follow-up question, which is what topics would the CSC like to be brought up that maybe weren't prioritized last year so that they get more time and attention this year? We're really curious to hear your feedback and implement those suggestions in this new year.
What we've heard so far is that the vegetative barriers, urban greening, folks are looking forward to the sidewalk construction projects and really looking at some of the work that will happen in the Mexican colony. So that seems to be a thread here, or a common theme. And we also heard from our co-host, Michelle, really keeping the work moving forward and involving the community to continue to celebrate the successes of the work that you all are doing. I think as you think about what else you want to prioritize in 2023, feel free to put it in the chat. I know folks may be experiencing technical difficulties. I know there was a delay in my streaming as well earlier. So I'd love to encourage you to keep those coming in the chat. Feel free to chat us privately or just put them in the chat and we'll keep notes of them. And we'll share out those notes at the next time that we meet. This isn't a one-time opportunity. We're going to try to have reflection and have your input on a continuous basis so that we can make sure that folks are really clear about the work that's happening and where it's going and know that your input matters. As you all know, the Air District does take your input very seriously and ensures that we use what you're sharing to set the agendas and prioritize the needs. So with that in mind, a good reflection and example of that is our next agenda item. So coming next, we're going to talk about oil and gas SERP commitments. And for this agenda item, we'll be hearing directly from the Air District, and it'll be an opportunity for you to have your concerns addressed, right? In the last couple of meetings, we heard directly from you all that you had some concerns and interest about learning more about the enforcement actions at the oil and gas facilities. So for today's meeting, the Air District was very intentional about giving you some updates. So we'd love for you all to hear these updates. Hopefully it generates some ideas and some questions on your end. We can keep the questions going as the Air District is presenting. In some cases, we can hold it till the end. Again, it'll be a conversation that we have with you directly. Before we move on to this presentation, are there any comments or questions? Great. So Jessica, how's your Wi-Fi? Do you want to share, or I can share for you?
I was going to say, I'm just actually introducing, hopefully you can all hear me right now. I made everyone in the vicinity of my house turn off their Wi-Fi devices. So I'm just really quickly introducing, and then I think our team is going to share, unless I'm wrong, let me know, Ellie or John, their own screen. Excellent. So Ellie Rodriguez and John Stagnaro are both on our compliance team. John is actually the director of the compliance efforts here across the entire district. And so we have the honor of having them both here to present the information that, as Amy said was requested of us, and we're really excited to not only highlight some of the enforcement actions that were requested last time, but really remind, it's been a while since we've talked about some of these commitments, and there's more to the SERP than just incentives. And so this is our chance to dig into that, and I will pass it on to my team to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica, and thanks, Dr. Ramos, for the introduction there. I'm John Stagnaro, the Director of Compliance. Jennifer Ledigerber was going to be here, but she couldn't make it, so I'm standing in for her. And we have Ellie Rodriguez, one of our air quality inspectors who does inspections in the Shafter community, here to co-present with me on the topic of compliance and enforcement within this community. But more specifically, we're going to try and drill down and talk about oil and gas operations like Jessica had introduced. So I'll get us started by talking about other enforcement CERT measures that have been implemented or are going through implementation at this time at a high level, but then I'll hand it off to Ellie to talk more specifically about the oil and gas operations in the Shafter community and what oil and gas regulation and enforcement kind of looks like from the district standpoint, what's required of operators, as well as rules and regulations that operators of oil and gas facilities have to follow, types of oil and gas production operations and equipment, the sort of equipment that we use to determine compliance when we're conducting our inspections in the field. And then Ellie will hand it back to me, and we'll talk a little bit about the enforcement actions that were taken that were summarized in the 2022 annual report for your community. And that's what we'll wrap the presentation up with. So with that said, there are several enforcement-related SERP measures that were adopted in the Shafter SERP, including enhanced enforcement of wood burning curtailments. So whenever the air quality is poor enough between the months of November and February, the district will issue out a curtailment indicating that homeowners that have fireplaces in their homes may or may not use those fireplaces. And whenever we make those curtailment calls within Kern County, Ellie and her team members will conduct 4 hours of surveillance, proactive surveillance on those days to ensure that fireplace smoke is not present in the community. There's also enhanced enforcement to reduce illegal burning of residential waste, with 15 hours of surveillance committed per quarter. Enhanced enforcement of statewide anti-idling regulations for large heavy-duty diesel trucks. There's idling requirements that they must adhere to, and if they're found to violate that, they can get a notice of violation. The driver or the hauler could. There's also a CERT measure for pilot training programs for conducting self-inspections at gas stations. So gas station owner and operators can do self-inspections and establish compliance or non-compliance with the requirements that they have to follow. And then lastly, in the meat of this presentation is the enhanced inspection frequency of stationary sources. And so stationary sources are like all of the oil and gas facilities in the community that have permits with the air district. And so if we were to find a violation while we're conducting an inspection of one of those stationary sources, then this enhanced inspection frequency CERP commitment means that we will do twice as many inspections. So instead of going back after a year, we'll go back after, say, 6 months to re-inspect that facility when there's an emissions related violation that's found. And so with that said, I'll hand it off to Ellie Rodriguez now, our air quality inspector, to talk a bit about oil and gas operations, more specifically their inspection and enforcement. And Ellie, please let me know when you're ready for the slide to advance.
Thank you, John.
Oh, sorry, Ellie, to jump in right there. John, that was a lot of information really quick, and we're doing simultaneous translation. So I want to make sure that folks, especially in our Spanish channel, have caught up and processed some of that content. So if we just give it 1 minute before we transition on, any questions from our Spanish channel, our translators, any comments or questions for clarification before we move on? They want to know the emissions of the ammonia for the winter time.
The emissions for ammonia during the winter time. That's a question that might be best responded to at a later time. I don't have that information off the top of my head.
I wonder if we can put that as an action item. And it sounds like, just to clarify, I don't know, because there are a few folks on that call with Annabelle, but just whoever types that, if you want to help clarify whether you put it in the chat or unmute, do you mean emissions, just general emissions in the area? You mean emissions in Shafter at winter time, possibly due to dairies? Sure, we can maybe do an update at a future date. Yes, we can do an update at a future.
Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say at a future date with emissions inventory information. This information is more about inspections at specific facilities related to oil and gas. But we'll note that as an action item and definitely get back to folks.
Wonderful, thank you. We will write that down. And Ellie, just as you continue the presentation, please be mindful that we are doing simultaneous translation.
Of course, thank you, Amy. Well, hi everyone. Like John said, my name is Ellie Rodriguez. I'm an air quality inspector for the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District. I also happen to be one of the area inspectors for the Shafter area. So if you ever happen to see me driving by, maybe doing surveillance or heading on to my next inspection, feel free to flag me down to say hi, or if you have any questions that I could answer, I'll be happy to anytime that you see me out. But I just wanted to start off by saying I'm super excited to be here. It's my pleasure to be here today presenting to you all on oil and gas operations. I'm ready for the next slide, John. Thank you. So before we begin covering the what and the how we inspect oil and gas operations, I would like to provide a little bit more background on why it is that we inspect these facilities at all. And I think in order to do that, we have to start off by discussing the Clean Air Act. This law, among other things, established how areas needed to meet national ambient air quality standards for various pollutants. These standards identify criteria pollutants, and criteria pollutants have been shown scientifically to cause adverse health effects. Things like carbon monoxide, ozone, oxides of oxygen. And once these standards were put in place, the different agencies at the national level, the state level, and the local level began to develop regulatory programs to put in place emission limits in order to reduce emissions and to protect public health. At the national level, you had the Environmental Protection Agency. At the state level, you had the California Air Resource Board and Geological Energy Management Division, also known as CalGEM. And then at the local level, you had the air districts. So for example, our area would have been the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District, the district that I represent. So when it comes to oil and gas operation, oil contains what are called volatile organic compounds, and these compounds react to produce ozone. Since ozone is considered a criteria pollutant, we regulate and we inspect these facilities to limit and reduce emissions of these precursors. I'm ready for the next slide, John. Some of the ways that the district regulates and inspects these operations are by enforcing rules and regulations that have been adopted and implemented by the district. Also by ensuring that permits and registrations for equipment and operations are issued for equipment and operations that may be subject to our rules. We also do it by conducting routine inspections of oil and gas facilities. In some areas, as in the Shafter and AB617 area, these inspections may be more frequently. We respond to and investigate any of the public complaints dealing with these facilities and other facilities as well. And we participate in joint inspections with partnering agencies that I mentioned before, such as like the EPA, CARB, and CalGEM. I'm ready for the next one, John. So I know you guys keep hearing me mention rules and regulations, and you're probably wondering, well, Ellie, what are these rules and regulations? So on the slide, you can see a list of the different rules and regulations that have been adopted and implemented by the district to apply to oil and gas facilities. Rules like 4307, 4702, they are seeking to regulate combustion exhaust sources like boilers, steam generators, heaters, and internal combustion engines. We have rules like 4401, 4409, and 4623 that look to reduce the emissions of VOCs from components associated with oil production, tanks, or wells. And also, if you notice, we have our California oil and gas regulation. This regulation looks to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. I did want to highlight, though, at this point that although we are going out and we are assessing our oil and gas facilities for the rules listed here, it's important that we don't get tunnel vision. So we will be out at these facilities assessing them for the rules listed, but we're also ensuring that we're assessing for any other rule that may be applicable. For example, if there's any unpermitted equipment on these sites, on these leases, if there is any visible dust emissions or any track out that's going on to public paved roads from these leases, they may be then subject to our Regulation 8 rule. So we are assessing them for the rules listed here, but in addition, we assess for other rules that may apply. I'm ready for the next slide, John. So we're gonna go into the part of the presentation that I think everyone enjoys. It's the pictures part. And I just kind of wanted to highlight during these two slides, just the different types of production operations that we would see if we're going out to conduct these inspections. And then kind of some of the equipment that we're seeing and that we're inspecting when we're doing these inspections as well. It's important to note that oil production or oil facilities vary in their complexity. You can have something as simple as a small oil production operator that has one single well and one single tank. Or it could get very complex and you can have thousands of wells and hundreds of tanks and many equipment. So that would be considered more of a large oil operation. When it comes to these large oil operations, at times they will have what are known as tank batteries. And if it's a very large facility, they might have a lot of tank batteries. Within these batteries, there's different equipment units that may be subject to our rules, which we are inspecting. For example, the picture in the center bottom is showing a tank battery with a flare and a separation system. The separation system is used to separate oil, gas, and water from their product, and it may be subject to one of our rules. The flare is used to burn any excess gas that may be produced from the lease, and it may be subject to our rule 4311. Ready for the next one, John? Some additional, this slide is showing some additional equipment that we are inspecting, that we're seeing out there. And I think it's an interesting fact that I learned when I came on to the district, but I always thought oil was a liquid, you know, that was my mindset when I first started working here. But it turns out that that oil actually varies in its consistency. You can have oil that's very thick, that resembles syrup or tar, or you can have oil that does resemble liquid and it's kind of more viscous. The steam generator bank here shown on the upper left is showing, like I said, a steam generator. And what that unit does is it pretty much creates steam that is then injected into the ground in order to heat up the oil and make it easier to extract. Once that oil is extracted, you would have things like on the upper right corner, which is our wells, and these wells come in all different shapes and sizes. I'm pretty sure you guys have seen them out there. They can be electric, they can be ran by engines, but they all have the common goal of extracting oil from the ground. And so, as I mentioned before, the oil facilities can vary in their size and complexity. So sometimes you might have a well and then you might not have the tank that's going to be receiving the product until like miles away. In those cases, facilities might have piping and valve in order to move oil or gas or water from point A to point B. These are actually sites that we also inspect. We'll inspect any pipings, any components that may be leaking. If your facility is like the one if the facility is like the one I explained, a larger facility, they may also have well header systems, and these are for facilities that have maybe hundreds of wells, a large amount of wells, and it's an area where all of the wells piping comes together, not together, but it's kind of in the same area where facilities can test their oil. They can even control which well is producing into their tanks. And then I think it's important to note that when oil is being extracted from the ground, it's not pure. It usually comes with impurities. So a lot of the process with oil production is isolating certain things, isolating oil, gas, or water. But the image in the center, the sulfur treat vessels, are actually pretty interesting because they're a way that the facilities will clean out their gas, so remove sulfur to make it cleaner gas, and then they'll use that gas to power maybe their steam generators or power their wells. Ready for the next one, John? So, giving you guys a little bit of background, kind of seeing a little bit of the images of what it is that we're inspecting while we're out there, kind of what oil operations look like. And I know the important thing here is how do we, as a district, conduct the inspections. And like I said previously, generally the district conducts oil and gas inspections on an annual basis. In some cases, as in the AB617 Shafter area, these facilities may be inspected on a 6-month basis. And generally the way that these inspections work is an inspector will go out, meet with a facility contact, will ask a lot of different questions so that we can understand their operation in order to determine any equipment, any lines that are subject to our rules. Once these lines and equipment are identified, we will go and use different specialized equipment to thoroughly inspect. So for example, hydrocarbon analyzers, which are like TVAs and Eagles, we utilize them to detect any fugitive emissions coming from pipes or coming from tanks, wells, any equipment that may be subject to our rules and may be leaking. Exhaust gas analyzers like testos are used for steam generators. We use them for boilers and for engines, other equipment as well. And they're used to test the exhaust in order to ensure that there's no emission, or they're meeting their emission limits for things like carbon monoxide or oxides of nitrogen. And then we have a really newer technology that we utilize that's pretty exciting. It's an optical gas imagery camera, and we use this as a screening tool in order to maybe screen a tank battery or an area to see if we can identify any leaks. If any leaks are identified with the camera, we then take our Eagle or our TVA and we quantify those leaks. Visible emissions evaluations didn't make it on the specialized equipment, but I would think it would be specialized because we're using our eyes. So during visible emissions evaluation, we use our eyes, which we get certified every year, to inspect any emissions that are coming from things like flares or any other units that may have opacity limits. And then finally, our record review process, we do a thorough record review of all of the facilities. This includes ensuring that they're meeting their emission limits, includes ensuring that they're within their throughputs values, and also that if the facility is required to do additional monitoring, testing, or sampling, that those things are being done. Ready for the next slide. So, as I mentioned, some operators are required to do additional testing or monitoring or sampling in order to ensure that they're being compliant year-round. Some of these programs include the Operator Leak Detection Repair Program, and this one requires facilities or operators to self-inspect on a quarterly or annual basis. And that doesn't include our district inspection. They have to do their own self-inspection to identify any repairs or leaking components. Similarly, the Tank Preventative Inspection Maintenance program requires that facilities inspect their tanks. It also gives guidelines for how facilities will clean and open their tanks. And then certain equipment, the ones that I keep kind of mentioning, are steam generators and engines and such, may have emission monitoring systems attached to them. And these monitoring systems devices take real-time readings of the emissions and will send any alerts to the inspector if the emission limits are exceeded, at which point the inspector will investigate further, maybe even go out and do a physical inspection of the facility to see what occurred that caused this monitoring system to show an exceedance. And then these same equipment, so the steam generators, engines, at times they're required to do source testing. And source testing just involves a third party provider coming out and sampling the equipment to ensure that emission limits are met. So source testing can be done on an annual or every 24 months or a 36-month basis. And then finally, some sampling of various oil and gas streams may be required. You may have, for example, if they're using, like I mentioned before, if they're using the sulfur gas, or sorry, the gas to power their steam generator, we may require that they test that gas to ensure that their sulfur limits are not exceeding a certain threshold. Our tanks are also at times subject to sampling, or their tanks are subject to sampling, where they might have annual tank vapor pressures that they have to report back to us, and API gravities.
All right. Thanks, Ellie. And hello again, everyone. Back to me here. I'll talk over the next few slides about how enforcement action is taken following inspections that inspectors conduct or completed. And then I'll go on to talk about the annual report for 2022 and specifically the enforcement summary of that annual report for your community, and then drill down a little bit into the oil and gas sector and the violations that they received. So when an inspector finds something that's not in compliance during their inspection, then they'll issue typically a notice of violation. And that can be when there's a leak that's found, not a liquid leak. Sometimes there's liquid leaks that we issue violations for, but most commonly they're gaseous leaks. So a gas leak that Ellie or her team finds when they have a hydrocarbon analyzer, they'll run the probe of the hydrocarbon analyzer over the various pipe fittings and tank systems and steam generators that Ellie showed us the pictures of. And if they find any leaks that exceed thresholds in our rules, then that's a notice of violation for a leak. There could also be violations issued for excess emissions from steam generators or boilers or process heaters. When we probe those stacks with our combustion emission analyzers, as Ellie was talking about, if those analyzers show an exceedance of a NOx or carbon monoxide threshold, then a violation could be issued for exceeding those combustion emissions as well. Also, unpermitted equipment, late testing or monitoring, failure to conduct a source test, failure to maintain records. Any of these things could lead to a notice of violation that inspectors issue in the field. And so moving on to the annual report summary for 2022 for Shafter. In total, over that report period, which was from July of 2021 through June of 2022, there were 72 notices of violation issued within the community. One of those notices of violation was issued for agricultural open burning, which came to our attention through public complaint. 32 notices of violation were issued during enhanced facility inspections. So as I mentioned, that's when we go out and inspect the permits that a facility has with us and all the equipment associated with those permits. So 32 violations issued during those facility inspections. And of those 32, 18 were associated with refinery or oil and gas operations. Another 18 notices of violation were issued for using a fireplace when there were curtailments in place. So as I talked about at the beginning, throughout the winter season, between November and February, the Air District will prohibit the use of fireplaces given, if the air quality is poor or poor enough to meet certain thresholds. There might be a no burning for all declaration. It might be only burning in your fireplace if it's got a registered EPA certified unit installed. In any case, 18 of these violations were issued for using a fireplace when folks shouldn't have been over that winter period. 7 notices of violation were issued for open burning, either residential or agricultural open burning. And that's excluding the one that was issued that we found following a complaint investigation. There were 6 notices of violation issued for failing to maintain or pass vapor recovery testing at gas dispensing facilities. That's like ARCOs and AMPMs and Chevrons and what have you. They have requirements to conduct vapor recovery testing, ensuring that their underground or above ground storage tanks can maintain pressure and do not leak. And so if they do not pass those vapor recovery tests, then they would receive a notice of violation. 6 were issued for that reason. 3 notice of violations were issued for construction dust or track out, which is when dirt or mud fall off the tires of a truck leaving a construction site and it gets onto a public roadway. There can be a violation issued for that. So 3 violations total there for dust related violations. And then additional notices of violation were issued for unpermitted equipment, indirect source review, or diesel idling. And here's another way of looking at that last slide. I know it was a lot to read, but for those of us that can interpret a graph better than the text, then here's this graph for us to take a look at. It's got the 32 facility inspections here at the top, of which, or facility violations, of which 18 were issued to oil and gas operations, the 18 fireplace violations, the total of 8 open burning violations to residential or ag sources, the 6 gas station testing violations, and the 5 other violations. Again, those were issued for either indirect source review, diesel idling, or unpermitted equipment. And then lastly, the 3 violations issued for construction dust or track out. So of those 18 violations that were issued to oil and gas operations, we wanted to highlight all of them, all 18 of them. And don't worry, at the end of the presentation, there'll be another slide graphically representing all this information. So hopefully that helps. But to read through it here, JP Oil, they received 13 of those 18 notices of violation, chiefly for leaks of tanks or leaks of their transfer systems where they fill tanks up, tanker trucks from their tanks. There can be leaks in those systems, which can lead to violations. Also, light oil component leaks. So there's heavy oil and there's light oil, and without getting into too much detail, we did break out the light oil producers and the violations that they received, as well as the heavy oil producers. And so JP Oil is a light oil producer for notices of violation were issued to them for exceeding the leak standard in Rule 4409. 3 notices of violation were issued for exceeding the combustion limits for their permitted engines. 1 violation was issued just for the NOx limits on an engine, and 1 was for incorrectly installing an exhaust pipe on their engine. Typically, there's a requirement for engines to have their exhaust stack mounted vertically and exhausting vertically. So in this case, it wasn't vertically exhausting. It may have had some angle to it or been a 90-degree or 45-degree angle. And so they received a violation for that. And in all cases, the leaks were repaired within the timeframes that they needed to be repaired within, and were re-inspected to show that the leaks were repaired by our inspectors, by Ellie and her team. And the engines that showed excess combustion emissions were tuned or repaired and also re-inspected to show that they returned to compliance with their emission standards. And the second company, there's 3 total. The second company that received violations was California Resources Production Corporation. They received 3 total, 1 for a leak that violated the California oil and gas regulation. That's the state regulation that has some leak standards in it for certain facilities and production operations that don't fit into our definitions of heavy oil or light oil. The state has this regulation that captures those producers, and they received a violation in this case for having a leak of that standard. They also received a violation for the light oil, for their light oil components. There was a leak there, as well as a leak on one of their tanks. And these as well all were repaired within the timeframes of the rules and re-inspected for compliance. And then lastly, Plains LPG Services. They received 2 of those 18 violations, 1 for leaks in their refinery. One of their refinery components were found leaking, 1 for the transfer of organic liquid process that they have. There was a leak there. And then those 2 were also repaired within the timeframes of the rules and re-inspected for compliance. And then here's that graph to kind of show in a different way how these violations were broken up within these 3 companies over this reporting period and the different types of violations that that Ellie and her team uncovered. So we've got the 3 tank leaks between JP Oil and CRPC, the 2 transfer rack leaks for JP Oil, the 8 component leaks from all 3, 4 engine emission violations for JP Oil, and 1 engine configuration violation for JP Oil. And that was the exhaust pipe that wasn't vertically exhausting. Again, just to reiterate, all of these have been corrected and were confirmed during follow-up inspections. So with that said, that concludes the presentation that we had for you all, and we'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you both, John and Ellie, for that great presentation. It looks like we do have a couple questions for you. I'll read the first one on the chat. It says, when is monitoring done? During working time from 8 to 5, or is it in the evening or the weekend? When do those inspections tend to take place?
That's a good question. Commonly, it's during regular business hours, but they are unannounced. When our inspectors go do their inspections for the day, they're unannounced inspections. So we show up with all of our equipment, and we introduce ourselves to the manager on site or supervisor on site, and we conduct the inspection from there. Occasionally, some small producers that Ellie talked about are very remote, or the sites are unmanned, in which case we'll need to coordinate with those businesses to get someone to meet us out there. But our first attempt is unannounced inspection during business hours.
Great, thank you. And Annabelle, I still see in the team out there, I see your hand raised. Would you like to unmute and ask your question, please?
My question is, mi pregunta, lo voy a decir en español, ahí disculpe. Mi pregunta es, ¿por qué no pueden cambiar los monitorear durante los fines de semana, las tardes, cuando la gente está en casa? ahorita ustedes, el Distrito del Aire, tratan de hacerlo durante el día, cuando la gente no está en casa, están trabajando, no están establecidos en sus hogares y lo están haciendo nomás en el día y eso no está bien. Quisiéramos que fueran más en las tardes porque es cuando hacen más contaminantes, cuando se mira la fuga de gas pasando, la torcha prendida toda la noche. Esas son emisiones que le está afectando a la comunidad y nos gustaría que fuera eso.
En las mañanas, al levantarte, cuando todavía toda la gente no anda en movimiento, los olores llegan hasta las casas. Sale uno en la mañana y afuera no se puede respirar.
Y eso viene siendo antes de las horas de negocio. Otra pregunta que tenía era, cuando hay las infracciones que hacen para las compañías, ¿en dónde se va ese dinero? ¿Se viene para atrás a la comunidad o lo usan para el distrito? ¿Qué es lo que esas infracciones que tienen, cómo la están usando? Porque si está pasando algo aquí en la comunidad y no se está usando ese dinero para reinvertirse para atrás a la comunidad, eso es algo que es alarmante. Y creo que si hacen más monitoreo en las tardes o en las meras mañanitas o en los fines de semana, pueden agarrar más gente que está haciendo violaciones que en la ciudad no lo están mirando. Y la comunidad sí lo está mirando y lo está viviendo.
Thank you, Bianca, for those questions. So I'm hearing two separate questions. One about the rationale for having the inspections occur during business hours. So if you all could provide a little bit more context and explanation for why those inspections tend not to happen during the early hours of the morning, evenings, and weekends, when folks in the community might be observing some of the pollutants occur.
Yeah, no, thanks for the question. And I guess I'll have to separate what we mean when we talk about inspections as opposed to complaint investigations. And so our routine or enhanced inspections that we conduct of permitted facilities, that's conducted during business hours because commonly it's private property and there is safety trainings and personal protective equipment that we need to make sure we have, and we need to be escorted during those inspections. And so that's why they're typically done during business hours, because that's when these businesses have staff available to show us all the equipment that we need to look at in the course of our routine inspection, all their permit units that we take a look at every time we go up there. However, if the community or anyone in the public observe something that they think might be a violation, or they smell something, then they can call our 24/7, 365-day-a-year complaint hotline, and the on-call inspector would respond to that after it's received. And if it were at early morning hours or later in the evening, then we would reach out to the facility and let them know about that, and be sure that we get out there to follow up with that complaint and inspect or investigate the nature of that complaint and what we find at that time. So that's more real time. That's not strictly during business hours, our complaint investigations.
Thank you for that answer, John. Very comprehensive. Want to see if there's any follow-up to that before we go on to the second question. Bianca and Anabel, any other follow-up to that? Or anyone on the call?
I have a question, but I thought I had raised my hand on there. Are JP Oil and the Plains Company, are they close to the colony?
I do not know off the top of my head. Ellie, do you know whereabouts they're located relative to Mexican colony?
I do. I believe they're about 2 or 3 roads south of the Mexican colony. JP Oil is. I'm not really sure about Plains, though.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your question. And I see that Jessica has provided a link to file a complaint. So if you'd like to continue to file your complaints, please do access that link that's provided on the chat. And you can also call that 24-hour hotline. So the second question was around when there is around compliance and the violation fee. So when there is a fee that gets allocated to a company, it sounds like folks want to know where those resources go. Where do those funds go?
Sure, no, great question as well. So the penalties that we assess in response to our violations all go toward, broadly speaking, air quality improvement programs, and that could be outreach and education programs and grant programs to replace old polluting equipment with newer equipment. Those are two of the chief sources that money, those monies go to when penalties are collected.
Thank you. Those were the two questions that I heard come from Bianca's group. Any other questions from anyone on the CSC? And those, go ahead, Bianca and team. I'll call you guys my team. You want to unmute, Bianca?
Queríamos saber si ya cuando nos pueden dar reporte cada 6 meses, cuánto dinero se está recibiendo por cada comunidad de estas infracciones, porque ahorita no sabemos ni cuánto están agarrando el distrito y en qué se está usando. Como dicen, sí se está usando para el alcance o lo que sea, pero si hay una oportunidad que es una chance, un dinero que se puede invertir para la comunidad, nos gustaría que nos dieran un reporte del distrito, cuánto se está ganando por cada infracciones cada 6 meses, si se puede.
John, would that be a question that you could answer?
Forgive me, I couldn't understand.
It was only in the Spanish channel. She would like to know if you all could report on how those funds are used. So maybe on a 6-month period, if we could have an update to the committee of here's the amount of funds that came in through the violations and here's how they get allocated to grants, to however it is that you all are allocating. And so could there be a report back to the committee to showcase the distribution of funds?
Yeah, thanks for that question too. We'll look into that to find out how to present that information to the community.
Great. So we'll note that as an action item to our CSC members, where the Air District will work on developing a plan to be able to present some of that feedback to the committee. Any other questions from folks at this time? As we mentioned at the top of the meeting, if there is public comment or public questions or concern about this agenda item, we'll take your questions now before we transition to the next agenda item. All right, not hearing any, so I'm going to pass it to Vanessa to guide us to the next agenda item.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you, Ellie and John, for that insightful presentation. Our next item is a high-level timeline for the implementation of the Community Emission Reduction Program, or CERP. You have all worked very hard to provide your input into the CERP and have collaborated with the Air District to continue moving this forward. This momentum will continue if there's a clear vision for both the community and the Air Districts. We want to acknowledge that this is not a perfect process. However, it is the process that we have in place at the moment, and it's important that the CSC continue to voice their concerns. We want to ask you again that you all listen to very closely to the information being provided and enter any questions or comments that you have into the chat so that we can have a written record of these. Jessica, would you prefer questions during or after the presentation?
I'll pause at each slide because each slide is a different measure. So during is great.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So in that case, we ask that you please hold your Zoom hand up if you have a question, or as I said before, feel free to post your question or your comment in the chat. We'll be sure to write down your questions and develop action items corresponding to the next steps. Before we begin, are there any questions from the CSC? I am not seeing any at this time, but if you have any, like I said, feel free to post them in the chat. Jessica, please go ahead. The floor is yours. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Vanessa. This is Jessica. I am going to share my screen, but if it gets wonky once again, Dr. Ramos, I did reply to you with the PDF. So we might tag team if we need to. So actually, I'll start from the start of the beginning. So this is, can everyone see my screen? Excellent. So we are going to highlight, especially kind of given we went over, which is great. We had a really robust conversation just now on a topic you were all interested in. But I do want to save some time to highlight at least 3 big measures that we heard even today are still sort of the top priority measures for you all. We're going to give you just a brief update. And then we do also, if there's any questions on any other measures, we're happy to discuss them here before we move on to our standing updates. We do have a little bit of time certainly for questions at each slide. So I will start with the road paving, sidewalk installations, and bike paths. So as you all know, we've sort of lumped these together because it turns out a lot of the projects that we have identified with you all or with the city or the county really include kind of all 3 or a version of all 3 of those in order to get the work done. So for example, oftentimes if you want a bike path somewhere, there also already has to be some sort of perhaps curb and gutter and sidewalk installation as well. So as you know, but just to kind of update you on where we are in the process, we have already together with you identified $2.5 million for 2 different projects. One is with the city of Shafter with the bike lane, curb and gutter and sidewalk. That's along the west side of State Route 43 between Mayor Lane and West Tulare Avenue. The Kern County project is the project we've all been talking about also really since the beginning of the CSC, which is the curb, gutter, and sidewalks in the Mexican colony area. We're really excited to continue to say we've been working really closely with CARB to get final approval on the project plans. We did update you all the last time we did get approval from our governing board, and we want to thank those of you that helped us get that approval. So we are continually in conversation with the city and the county, and as soon as those project plans are approved, we will be implementing those contracts. So we really, I think Linda said one of her goals this year was to start to see some work on this, and we really do anticipate starting to see work moving forward. Each of these projects, of course, has different phases of the work, so there's planning involved. And then, of course, actual installation and construction work. So we're really looking forward. Both of these projects are on time and on timeline to spend before the end of our SERP timeframe. One thing that's not noted here, but noted and something we're looking forward if folks are interested at an upcoming meeting, is to talk about how we still have about $1 million left in sort of these combined efforts for more, whether it's bike paths or road paving improvements. So we've shared some maps. Some folks have been interested, and we've followed up on action items in the past to talk about some of the efforts or some of the planning efforts on the city side. And we're really eager in 2023. One of my goals is to get more of this funding under contract so that we can install bike lanes per some of your priorities. So I'll stop there and see if there's any questions or just any support for whether it's the February or March meeting, making one of the main topics rather than an update, an actual sort of deep dive on bike lanes.
I have a comment. I think I brought it up before. The Mexican colony, we already have curbs and gutters, but we need the sidewalks. And I had asked before if the funding that was allocated for that could be used for some other project.
So this is in conjunction. I don't know if it's hard for me when I'm sharing my screen. I don't know if we have, I know we have a Kern County Public Works person. I don't know, April, if you're the correct person to answer the question, but I can answer the question from what I know from working with your team about this project. I don't see April meeting. So just to answer your question, Dora, I do hear your question. From our understanding, this is all one big package. So in order to do the sidewalk work, and I'm happy to share back out with the committee all of sort of the details that went into this proposal. This is in order to complete the sidewalk work, I believe there has to be some work done on curb and gutter. So it's not saying that there's no curb and gutter there, but in order to install the sidewalk and kind of expand out, there has to be some curb and gutter work. And that was presented to the committee a while back. So it has been a while since we've talked about those details, and I'm happy to share some of those details with you, Dora, or the whole committee.
Okay, thank you.
All right, not seeing any other questions for now, but of course, please put more in the chat or pause later if something else comes up. I'm going to go on to the next one, which is residential air filtration, another big program that a lot of you prioritized in your reflections. We wanted to just let you know, this is an update since we last talked with you, but of course you heard this in the the action items update at the beginning of the meeting. We have $1 million in this program, and we have submitted the project plan to CARB for approval. So that was just done at the beginning of December. This was actually done for all of our communities, and we're really excited. We have posted this, and we can maybe have someone drop in the chat once more the link to this project plan. We will then have to take something to the governing board and release what we call a request for quotation, which is very similar to the request for proposals that we have talked about for vegetative barriers. So the idea there is similar concept where we aren't going to do the air filtration distribution. We're going to make sure that we get the best pricing for the type of units. And we're hoping to do all of this within the next couple of months, or next 3 months rather, to make sure that this is off the ground soon. And hopefully before, it's hard to believe when it's rainy outside, but hopefully before a wildfire season, so folks can start to have clean air in their homes. I know a lot of you did receive that pilot program air filtration unit from us. We're hoping to essentially do something like that for every single person, or as many people as possible in your community. And then, of course, as you all know, we're also looking to explore how we can expand that into care facilities and in-home daycares. We definitely didn't lose sight of that and want to make sure that that's part of the discussion as well. Any questions there? All right, again, if folks have questions right now or later or after the meeting, please let us know. We, of course, will continue to update you, and this will all be in our regular tracker every month. The final one, which of course is a big priority for you all, is that we have $1 million for vegetative barriers. So the subcommittee met back at the end of November to review what we call a request for proposal. So that was that big item that we're going to put out there sort of to the public, and maybe ask some of you to help release once we're ready, to ask folks to help administer the program. So that means they're in charge, they're the tree experts that are in charge of making sure the barriers are installed properly, that they're installed in a place that you all think makes sense based on your concerns about dust and pollution. We actually sent that draft RFP, or request for proposal, to the CSC just a few weeks ago, along with feedback for support. So we did get some feedback from folks. Most of the folks, we didn't get a lot, but most of the folks that we did hear back from were residents, and they did support releasing the RFP. So we'll definitely continue to solicit feedback. Because we still have to go to our governing board for approval, we do have a little bit of time. But again, we're really close, I think, once we kind of get that ball moving with our governing board, to releasing that and making sure that we have someone that could apply. And And so I'll pause there and see if there's any questions about vegetative barriers. Oh, sorry, one more thing is that I want you to all know that one of the good things about vegetative barriers when it comes to this proposal, this is actually sort of the beginning, or it feels like the beginning of a new process to include you all in this particular measure. We really anticipate the trees subcommittee to continue to meet to help drive this type of measure. So I just want you to all know that that's our intention, is that it's not just you had 2 opportunities to have input on the project plan and the RFP, but it's really continuing to check in on this measure through what hopefully, like I said at the beginning of the meeting, hoping to do more subcommittees for folks to really dive in. And I'll pause there and see if there's any questions about the barriers. All right, well, that's all we had in terms of the high priority measures, and sort of given the time, I wanted to pause there, see if there's any questions. And really what I'll just acknowledge is that if there's any other measures, and this is one of the questions Vanessa asked us at the beginning of the meeting, that you feel like we haven't touched on in a while because we've been focusing on sort of these high priority measures, put them in the chat, maybe raise your hand and just say, hey, it's been a minute since we've talked about this. We are continuing to move kind of in parallel along with all of the measures. So we're only really focusing on updating you on the priority ones you want to hear about, but we're happy to come at any time and talk in more detail about any of the other measures. So feel free to let us know, put it in the chat, or come to our agenda setting meeting and share with us there. Michelle.
Well, you brought up the agenda setting meeting. Is that the same, almost the same time as our fireplace and search workshop?
We are moving the agenda setting meeting, and Vanessa will share that too at the end of the meeting, and we'll let folks know and send out an email. But yes, that is exactly right.
Oh man, how am I going to be able to do it all?
We want you all to go to the fireplace workshop if that is of interest to you. So we are going to move the agenda setting meeting to make folks available for that workshop.
Great. Okay, thanks.
Thank you all. And that's a great plug for the agenda setting meeting. If you're interested in, having more input on the agenda items, the flow of the meetings themselves, please do make time to join us for the agenda setting meetings. And Vanessa will have more details on the logistics of those meetings momentarily. But before we get there, we're almost done. Hang in there. I know folks are getting a little bit angsty with all the rain coming in. But we're almost there. Our next agenda item is to provide space to have some standing updates from many of the agencies that help implement the AB617 work. So as usual, we're going to hear from government agencies. They're going to provide us their updates. And then if there are other folks that have other updates to share, please do plan to share that momentarily. So let's get started with CARB. Did I see someone from CARB? Actually, I didn't see anyone earlier, so let me just double check. Do we have any updates from CARB?
I don't know about CARB, Dr. Ramos, but I think the first one actually on there is air monitoring, and I'm actually going to give the air monitoring update. So
why don't you go for that then?
Okay. So I actually have sort of an important update, pretty different from our typical updates, and it piggybacks a little bit on the update that Eric shared at the top of the meeting with our action items regarding mobile monitoring. And so I actually wanted to share something with you all, and I'm happy to take quick questions here, but certainly I want you all to reach out to me where you might be doing some reaching out to you about the update I'm going to share. So we actually were recently conducting mobile air monitoring. As you know, we've been pretty regularly going to the La Colonia area to park our van for a significant amount of time, conduct air samples, and then report out regularly to you all. While we were recently there, just back in December, we actually had an individual vandalize an air monitoring van while the air monitoring personnel were in the van, endangered the safety of the district team conducting the air monitoring. So we're working actually very closely with the sheriff's office as they investigate the matter. And we're working on additional measures, of course, and this is put in the action item to make sure we increase the safety of our team and the monitoring equipment, but it's certainly more importantly, our staff and personnel kind of involved in that before we resume using the air monitoring van, especially when we park it and kind of just anywhere throughout the valley. It's definitely not specific to Shafter. We're kind of taking a pause and trying to reevaluate how we use our monitoring van moving forward. So in the meantime, of course, we have all our air monitoring units that are deployed throughout Shafter. And of course, as you all know, we are working to install an air monitoring unit that would be there more regularly or just kind of for a significant regular period of time in the La Colonia area, because really the van was intended to be temporary there anyway. So if you have any questions kind of about that or about what happened, we might actually be calling and reaching out to a few of you. If you're interested in us calling you to reach out to you, please let us know. But otherwise, we will continue to evaluate the safety and the use of our mobile monitoring equipment, and then we'll let you know once we kind of resume that mobile monitoring. And we're hoping, of course, to do that as quickly as possible. That does not have anything to do with our regular 24/7 real-time air monitoring that you can see on our website. So that's going to continue moving forward. I will pause there and see if there's any questions. Go ahead, Michelle.
I just have a comment. As a community, we're sorry that somebody took that upon themselves to do that. And I'm sorry as a community that someone did that. We all are feeling that kind of things across the state. And I'm sorry that you guys had someone whose safety was in jeopardy.
Thank you, Michelle.
I have a comment. I did owe Michelle's comment, and I didn't realize, is this the one with the axe incident? Okay.
Correct.
All right. Well, I'll contact you later. Thank you.
Thank you, Dora.
Thank you, everyone. We're going to move on to our next update from DPR.
Good evening, everyone. We don't have any specific update, but the only thing that I wanted to share with this committee is about our 130 rulemaking. So as you know, we submit our rulemaking package in November, and there was a comment period. The comment period ends on January 18th, and there would be also a hearing on January 18th as well. All the details for when the hearing is and where it happens, it will be a hybrid it will be in Sacramento in our headquarters and also through Zoom. I'm going to share a link here that all the details for the hearing and also the comment period is there. We would like to see any comments that the community has about our rulemaking, and also we would like to see any comment that you want to make in our hearing verbally as well.
Thank you. Any comments or questions before we move on?
Can I help ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Yeah.
So there is a hearing on January 18th. Is that up until then? Is that when comments are due? You might have said it already, but is there like a longer comment period if someone maybe doesn't make the meeting or the meeting prompts?
The comment period is to the end of the year, but the hearing is in the morning.
The hearing
at 9:30 a.m.
And the comments through when?
Through the end of the day.
Through the end of the day on January 18th.
That is correct.
Awesome. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you for that clarification question, Jessica. I did earlier see Caltrans. I'm not seeing them on the line right now. So we're going to go ahead.
Yeah, I also saw them. I think Lorena had to jump off.
Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and skip Caltrans. Any other agencies who would like to provide an update this evening? As I mentioned previously, this is the time for agencies and community-based organizations to provide updates on what's happening within the AB617 boundary for Shafter. Anyone else have any other updates you'd like to share at this time? All right, well, I'm going to pass it to Vanessa to walk us through our final next steps as we wrap up today's meeting. Vanessa?
Thank you, Amy, for wrapping up that section. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for the final slide. Just give me 1 second, please. I'll share my, can you all see my screen okay? Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, everyone, for engaging in today's meaningful topics that address your community's concerns around air quality. And I also want to give a special thanks to everyone who shared their reflections this evening as well. So as we're approaching the end of our meeting, I'd like to take a moment to share a few key updates. Our next agenda setting meeting will take place on Thursday, January 19th at 4 p.m. This meeting will take place on Thursday instead of Monday because Monday is holiday. And as you all know, on Tuesday, you will be having the sidewalks workshop. So we want to make sure that folks attend that. I'd also like to remind you that beginning this month, the agenda setting meetings will start at 4 p.m. instead of 3 p.m. This change was made after CSC members expressed that the time of the meetings was challenging for them to attend. So we hope that this makes it easier for members to attend, and we also welcome your additional suggestions on how to improve the accessibility of agenda setting meetings. It's really important that we hear all of your voices and that you have input in what the next agenda items will be. Next, our next CSC meeting will take place on Monday, February 13th at 5 p.m. via Zoom. And as you can see, we also added some contact information. So we've added the contact information for the San Joaquin Valley Air District, as well as for Harder & Company. So if you have any sort of questions or comments about the content that was discussed today, if you have any reflections that you would like to share at a later time, please feel free to contact the Air District at the number shown there or at that email. And you can also contact us directly at that email. I'm happy to share that contact information via the chat too as well. Or actually, if one of my colleagues can go ahead and share that, I would really appreciate it. Acknowledge that it's important to be transparent, and we want to give all CSC members opportunity to share feedback, whether they can attend the agenda setting meetings or not. So again, we really encourage you all to reach out to us if you have anything that you'd like to share. And we'll now take a moment to review the action items captured in our tracker during our meeting today. My colleague Jem will share her screen and read those out. As she shares the action items, please feel free to ask for clarification or to ask her for any updates. Any actions that more accurately document. Feel free to ask for any updates on any action items that you don't see reflected on the shared screen. Jem, can you please go ahead and share your screen?
Sure. Thank you, Vanessa. I'll really quickly introduce myself. I'm a new face to Shafter, but I'm coming over from another CSC meeting team, the Fresno AB617 CSC. So very familiar with the space and really excited to join you all. But before I share action items, I see Linda has her hand up, so I'm going to pass it to you really quick.
I'm sorry. The event at Tin Cup, what was the time on it? I know we were going over stuff for next month and I didn't want to miss it. It was at
4:30.
4:30. Okay, thank you.
4:30 to 6, and it's a kind of a come and go event. So we're not expecting everyone to be there right at 4:30, but rather, show up whenever they can.
4:30 to what time, Jamie? Sorry, I didn't catch
About 6 o'clock, but we'll be there. If people are there, we'll stay later as long as Tin Cup may kick us out, but we'll be there as long as we can if people are still there.
Awesome. Any other questions or comments before we move on to action items? Is this in person or Zoom? There's a question on the chat. I'm assuming that question is about the events.
The event is very much in person. The request was that folks had an ability to go and kind of talk one-on-one with different retailers and get assistance. But if folks still have questions after that, we can meet with them. It's not really a workshop so much as we're calling it show and tell. So Jamie might have more information.
And some of our hearth retailers are actually looking to bring in the devices. So you'll see what a gas insert might look like or what a heat pump might look like. That's the goal. We're trying to figure out some logistic stuff, but the idea is for it to be almost like you're shopping, almost like you're in Home Depot and you're shopping for some type of device. The retailers will be there, and then our grant staff will be there to talk to you about how much money you could potentially get off of the cost of the item, which is up to $5,000. In some cases, it could be, we've had some folks who've gotten a gas unit installed for free. They haven't paid anything out of pocket.
And then just a final clarification, Angelica, this is a Tuesday. Monday is actually a federal holiday, so we're doing this Tuesday at 4:30. And we'll drop the flyer in one more time for folks.
Sounds like a great event. Speaking of flyers, I think that's the first action item we have here. So I'm going to pivot us over. Feel free to just raise your hand or drop a question in the chat if you have a clarifying question or if you have any corrections to the action items we've recorded tonight. All right, can you all see my screen? Awesome, thank you for the confirmation. So first simple action item for tonight will be the Air District will circulate the flyer for the change out event for folks who haven't received it yet, so via email or send it out. The next action item, the Air District will provide an update of the ammonia emissions during winter in Shafter at a future meeting. I'll pause there in case there's any question or corrections there. All right. Then we have the Air District will provide information to the CSC regarding violation fees. So specifically how much is collected and how those funds are being used. Any questions or comments? All right. And then lastly, the Air District will continue to share additional details on the approval process for proposals for SERP incentive measures to ensure that CSC members have opportunities to get to engage in the subcommittee work. All right, and those are all that we have listed. Are there any action items that we are missing or any corrections you want to offer today? Wonderful, and as always, we'll provide a follow-up on this in the next meeting. Thanks all, I will pass it back to Vanessa.
Thanks, Jen, for reading out those action items. I'm going to pass it on to Amy for public comment. Amy, please go ahead.
Yeah, so as you all know, we stream these meetings live on YouTube, and tonight I'm not seeing any comments on YouTube. I do see a few public members here today, so I want to provide some space for you all to ask questions, make a comment. So at this point, we'll be taking any public comment about any topic. That doesn't mean that it had to be an agenda item. So I'll give you all a minute. All right, well, we're not seeing any comments and I'm not seeing any hands raised here. So on behalf of our team and the Air District, we'd love to thank you for being here today. I know the weather is a little bit tricky in California today. I hope you all stay safe and stay warm out there. And we really want to thank you for your continued commitment to implementing AB617. At this point, we're going to end the meeting and I hope everyone has a good evening. All right, we'll see you at the agenda setting and debrief meeting next week on Wednesday.
19th.
All right.
Thursday.
Thursday. Sorry, Thursday.